go ahead and
get that started.
Yeah. And good afternoon, everyone. We will get started in just a couple of moments as we have a few of our members join us here. We'll get started in just a few moments. And Amber, if you could maybe help me just track in terms of where we are in terms of membership here.
Sure. So we have a number of new JV partners.
And there's a few more just joining. Good afternoon, everyone. We'll get started in just a few moments. Thanks for joining us.
Terrence just joined us from the JV. Belinda is also from the JV. Tayo, part of Jeff's team. Brianna. We also, Janelle, we have a few independent cover folks.
Great. And I see Lee is joining here as a few more COAC members join. We'll just get started in a few moments. Folks are just dialing in, everyone. Thanks for your patience. Okay, well, if we want to go ahead and get the slide deck up, we'll go ahead and kick off, and as folks join, we can integrate them. We have so much to cover this afternoon that I don't want to delay any longer. Good afternoon, everyone. For those I have not met, my name is John L. Bell, and I am the facilitator for the Community Oversight Advisory Committee, and we look forward to a fun-filled, packed, and rich discussion-filled meeting today. And so we're going to go ahead and get the slide deck up in just a second here. Great. Next slide, please. Amber, did you want to review this or did you want me to?
Sure, no, I can do it, no problem.
Okay.
This is for those participants that are listening in via live stream, and also for most everyone here is very familiar with Zoom. In case you're not, don't forget in Zoom, there are buttons on the lower that allows you to unmute and start your video. If you have technical difficulties, please contact Grace. And here is her phone number. She can help you with any technical difficulties you either have with getting access. Please, for the COAC members, please keep your video on. For those of us that will be providing technology, they will likely turn their video off so that we can focus on the COAC members. There are two different teams that will be working tonight. So there will also be breakout rooms a little bit later at about 5:08. This meeting is live streamed. If you would like to make a comment, you will need to raise your hand. We're waiting for a few other members. The agenda is as follows, and we'll get started momentarily.
Great, and thank you, Amber, and welcome everyone again. So we have a packed agenda as we indicated prior. We'll go through our sort of operating norms. For those of you who've participated in meetings in the past, those will not be new to you. We'll also receive a few project updates. We'll receive an update with respect to our HAB. We have Erica, who is prepared to deliver that. And then we'll receive project updates from Megan Channel, from ODOT. Then we'll have a discussion around our December 10th meeting summary notes. And then we're going to get into the meat of the matter. I really start to have a robust discussion around the CMGC's diversity plan. As you will note, we will not be having a conversation about the whole plan this evening. We will roll up our sleeves on Subpart A. So you'll receive an overview from the CMGC there, and then we'll get into some breakout groups to have more opportunity for discussion. That will then lead us to report outs, and then we'll jump right into an additional hour. And by the way, thank you all for your patience with us and agreeing to be with us for 3 hours. Normally these meetings are 2 hours, but we thought it would be so important for you to receive an update and to have a conversation with our independent cover assessment group. They are here this evening as well, and we'll have an opportunity of doing a bit of a work session. That will be followed by public comments, and then we'll have conclusion and next steps. And so lots to cover. Next slide, please. Amber, you want to go through this?
Sure. For those of you who wish to make a formal comment, you can either send an email through, I think it's coming up, there is an email address. After the breakout group, you'll be able to provide formal comment. It'll be at 5:08. We'll have the breakout group, and then you can come back and raise your hand and provide formal comment.
Great. And just a reminder, I'll go through these fairly quickly, but our ground rules, the first is to let everyone participate by listening to and respecting the diverse views and opinions. There's a reason why all of you are around this virtual table. We want to create space to hear your perspective. And so really important piece for us to really listen with an open mind, for us to value learning from different input and different lived experiences. That's also important. For us to stay open to new ways of doing things. Just us being here this evening in a community oversight advisory committee is a new way of doing things, not only I think for ODOT, but for other infrastructure projects. So we want to be open to other new things. For us to treat others constructively and respectfully, and I will at times, if need be, remind us of these ground rules. Next slide, please. For us to respect the role of the facilitator to guide the group's process, my role here is to be a neutral observer and to help facilitate us towards our stated agenda, as well as to ensure that everyone on the COAC can fully participate. For us to attack the problem, not the person, and I cannot emphasize that enough. Again, we can have vigorous debates and disagreements, but let us not personalize or attack. Again, I will continue to help monitor that. For disagreement, frustrations, and differences of opinions are acknowledged, explored, and addressed. Again, the tenet of this work is valuing diversity of thought as well as of opinion. So that will be the rules of the road for this evening. Next slide, please. And with that, I am going to first turn it over to Megan. Megan?
Thank you, Jonelle, and good evening, everybody. It's nice to see you. So in terms of updates, what have we been up to since we last met? It's really been focused around our partnership and collaboration and onboarding of our joint venture partner, so Hamilton Sent Joint Venture in association with Raymore. So this evening, you'll be seeing one of the kind of first initial products that the team has been focused on since beginning. So you'll be reviewing and discussing Subpart A of the joint venture's diversity plan. This is based on the early point in design. So we're at 20% design right now, which means that this diversity plan is still preliminary. It doesn't yet contain all of the information. It does not yet contain fixed dollar amounts for firms. And that's strategic. We want to come to you early in the process and work with you as the design progresses, as we know more about the project. and as we have those costs more honed in. So the project costs will become more concrete over time, along with the diversity plan, and coming alongside together in focus in coordination with you as the COAC. So today really is the first of several meetings to discuss the diversity plan, and specifically Subpart A. So we know that we aren't going to be able to cover all of it in just one meeting, so bear with us as we take a phased approach here. Our goal is really to focus in on a few specific elements this evening, and then again pick up at our next meeting where we left off today. And reviewing these drafts section by section, our intent is to make this a collaborative approach between the COAC members and our joint venture team in developing and ultimately carrying out the diversity plan. So COAC members, we are excited to have you here tonight, highlighting your expertise where there's, barriers to participation, and all the perspectives that you bring to the table. So thank you in advance for your engagement. And if we run out of time tonight to address any specific comments, this is not by any means a one and done in terms of meetings. As I said, we'll be back in the future, but we can also collect comments between the meetings as well. So we'll reach out maybe with a follow-up email on how to do that as you've had a chance to digest more of the information from tonight. So with that, again, I just want to give kudos to our joint venture team. I feel very lucky to have some of the best partnered with us with Hamilton Cent Joint Venture, but specifically Jeff Moreland and Bill Bruce of Raymore Construction, and the key focus that they've had on the diversity plan to get us here. So excited to see their presentation this evening. With that, Janelle, I'll turn it back to you. That concludes my project update.
Great, thank you so much, Megan, and would love to introduce Miss Erica Warren to provide an update on the Historic Albina Advisory Board. Erica?
Indeed, thanks, Janelle. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for being in this space with us tonight. I'm happy to be with you, with COAC members and the joint venture team. Again, I'm Erica Warren. I am part of Tri-Excellence, which is the brainchild of Dr. Stephen Holt, and we have the pleasure of working in strategy with the leadership team for this I-5 Rose Quarter project. Dr. Holt facilitates the executive steering committee, and I've had the honor of working with the Historic Albina Advisory Board. So as a way of an update, it has just been just a couple of meetings now, a great selection of Portlanders with deep ties to Historic Albina, those who have been serving in the community for years, who are having a great opportunity to speak into the future of this project alongside this group of COAC, as well as the Executive Steering Committee. Over the last meeting or so, we've been meeting with the Independent Cover Assessment Team, the ICA team, and they have been taking us through their community workshop, which is the same they've presented to a number of key stakeholders in the Albina community, those with historic ties. And so you'll be in good hands tonight with them. As far as collaborative approach, we hope to be spending time with you more, just a little bit between Dr. Holt and myself, and so that we can make sure that all of these community groups are serving collaboratively together. So thanks again, Janelle and Amber and Andre, for letting me share with you guys tonight. I look forward to working with you. Great,
thank you so much. So with that, I believe I am turning it over to our CMGC partners. Jeff, is that you're going to kick us off, or who's going to lead us?
That'll be me. So if you can cue up the slides, and we'll just go into our brief presentation, and we'll take it from there.
Great.
Okay, give me a second, I'm sorry. Get all my stuff queued up here. All right, good afternoon. Again, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Jeff Moreland. I'm the president of Raymore Construction and one of the 3 executive team members for the Hamilton Cent JV, who will provide oversight for the project. As a longstanding member of the community, I'll provide hands-on oversight as it pertains to diversity and inclusion throughout every aspect of this project, from pre-construction to final construction. Folks, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity we have in front of us. Everything is completely aligned, right? The stars are completely aligned. First, you have a large infrastructure project. We're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars that will run multiple years, that will provide long-term opportunities for businesses, employees, and community development. And we know one of the most important ways to see a community be reestablished and thrive is to have economic opportunities that brings jobs and brings employment. Number two is you have an owner team that wants to be different. ODOT, you know, I personally work with ODOT pretty closely for the last 10 years, meeting with them sometimes on a monthly basis to get to the CMGC process. And I can just speak for the highest level, from the Transportation Commission down to the ODOT's level with Chris Strickler and Brendan Finn, and in the project level with Megan and the entire team. They're committed to doing things differently, right? The formation of the community or the COAC, the HAB, the ESC, all that shows that they're doing things in a transparent way, that we're going to be open with the community and have the community actually participate in changing the way these projects have been delivered in the past that is not necessarily done well for the minority of the BIPOC community. Then you have third, you have a CMGC contractor in Hamilton Sun, who historically has done a good job in their own rights of diversity and inclusion, but has enough wherewithal for a project of this size to partner with a local minority firm to empower that minority firm to have a real voice, to sit at the table and to influence the direction of this project, and to give us the horsepower of a much larger, even a national firm, so that we have the chance and opportunity to continue to achieve the results that Raymore has consistently achieved through diversity and inclusion and worker development. And then finally, you have the CMGC delivery method, which it gives us a flexibility to deliver this project differently than a bid build project, right? It establishes a collaborative working relationship, you know, which is what we're going to be doing in our breakout sections, to really talk about how do we bring this job to fruition. We've done it for a long time, but we want the input of everybody to help us get there. All of us are committed to not only, you know, achieving, but if it's any way possible, our goal is to exceed the current project goals, which are 18 to 22% DBE participation. This project is about restorative justice. This project is about helping the BIPOC businesses create the expertise and the systems to compete in the open market by removing the historic barriers and provide equity through the opportunities for work, the equity through education, the equity through mentorship, right, to help our firms catch up to be able to compete. And if this is done correctly, it will provide a level of economic stability for our businesses, the people, and the community. I'd like to turn it over to Matt now to talk a little bit more about our commitment.
Thanks, Jeff. Matt O'Connell, I'm the project manager. You know, even though Jeff said it, you know, I want to start out by saying our team is dedicated and committed to achieving all goals relating to DBE and workforce diversity. You know, this is going to be difficult work, and everybody representing our team this afternoon understands this and felt strongly enough to volunteer to work on this project. The executive team has empowered us at the project level and has assured me that they'll provide all the necessary resources to accomplish our goals. When we began to draft up this plan that we're talking about this evening, you know, our group studied the 9 guiding principles adopted by this committee. You know, we believe they touch on everything we envisioned to accomplish for the community on this project. But we did feel there was a couple items missing, so we included 2 additional principles. One being that the long-term relationships between ODOT, City of Portland, and the DBE community really could be enhanced. And it's our goal that this can be accomplished, you know, on this project. Secondly, we have specifically written that we'll collaborate with this committee to provide input and recommendations regarding DBE participation and workforce development throughout the duration of this project. So the plan being presented this afternoon is aligned and incorporates all these principles. This plan, while it's somewhat advanced, it's still in draft form and really far from a finished product. And beginning this afternoon, we look forward to your contribution to help us build out the plan over the next several months. And with that, I want to turn it over to Bill.
Hello, everybody. It's nice to see you all again. I want to thank you, first of all, for your commitment to being part of this. It says something about you each individually to sign on to a project like this. For the last 2 months, we've been working primarily on writing the plan and collaborating with the ODOT team, the owner's representative, getting their input. We've done a lot of back and forth, a lot of hand wringing and a lot of good work, I think. So in front of you now, hopefully as of Monday night, you got Subpart A in front of you. Can we switch the slide, please? The overall diversity plan actually has 3 subparts, as Megan referred to earlier. The plan that we're going to review first is Subpart A. It's everything DBE, everything subcontracting. But there are 2 other components to the overall diversity plan. Subpart B will be apprenticeship, everything apprentice. And Subpart C will be the workforce, everything other than apprenticeship within the trades. And both of those other 2 subparts will touch on a couple of new elements that I haven't seen in previous diversity plans. So there's something to look forward to. But tonight's all about Subpart A. Again, I'm hoping you all had a chance to read through it at least once, and maybe even be able to refer to it tonight as we work through the next hour. If you were to put Subpart A into outline form, it would look like this slide that's in front of you right now. The first section is really about defining historical barriers and proposing possible solutions. They're not new. They're items that we've been working on for a lot of years. The second component is maximizing participation of DBE firms through the Green Sheet tool. The Green Sheet tool is a tool that I've used and developed for a lot of years on a lot of projects. And I created it in order to try to plan contracting at the front end of a project so that I could achieve an outcome at the end of a project. In the last few years, I've heard several people use the term science, the science related to diversity in contracting. And so it's kind of taken a little bit of a life of its own. But again, the Green Sheet tool is something that I've used for a lot of years. And it is important to the project. The third element is strategies to increase utilization of DBEs on the project with subparts capacity building, subpart strategies for DBE outreach, and subpart identifying DBE availability and capacity. And all of that comes out of the Green Sheet tool, essentially. The next one is the joint ventures approach for determining procurement methods, followed by the mini prime program, which isn't completely unique to this project. It does exist on other projects starting in 2006, but isn't necessarily included in every project, and certainly fits within the confines of this project or within the opportunities of this project. And then lastly, technical assistance as applied and tailored to all the other elements that we just discussed. So it's all there in in Subpart A for you to read and digest. Although the tendency would be to want to jump right into the science, it's important that we spend at least one of these meetings building a foundation to work off of, and talking about historical barriers and solutions are the right place to start. They really are. It's a good warm up for us for my team that I'm going to introduce to you here in a second, to have dialogue with you, for us to hopefully agree on find some commonalities, but also utilize your experiences to add to the body of work that you have in front of you. So that's our goal tonight. The timing of the green sheet is perfect for next meeting if things work out that way. We've been working with the joint venture on 6 other deliverables that all have just as much pertinent information, just as much science that feeds into the diversity plan. Everything from the estimate to the schedule, those 2 being probably the most critical to development of a good green sheet tool. So by having all those deliverables, including this diversity plan, come together this week and next week, we should be poised perfectly a month from now to get into the science of DBE contracting, as well as workforce development. So without further ado, I brought a lot of the same people that I brought to the last meeting, people that are going to be on this project. With us again tonight is Jennifer Erickson, who's part of the diversity team, Belinda Mutoni, who's currently a project manager out on the Division Transit project, who will be in a management role on this project as well. Tayo Adishida, who's also out on the same project with Belinda in the role of a field engineer. New tonight is Terrence Hayes, who's also working on that same project and will also come to the Rose Quarter. Terrence, would you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, how you guys doing? My name is Terrence Hayes. I have about 11 plus years in construction. The majority of that is as an electrician. And the last year I've been working as a field engineer with Raymore. So I'm excited to be here and look forward to working with you guys.
Thanks, Terrence. Also new to the group tonight and a member of the Hamilton Sun joint venture working on the Rose Quarter project right now is Brianna DeKalb. Brianna, would you introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Bill. Hi, my name is Brianna DeKalb. I'm a project engineer, like Bill said, with Hamilton Sun joint venture. I've been working in design and construction here now for about 6 years in the Portland area. I'm really excited and thankful to be part of this team and process, and just happy to be able to listen and learn from all of you here. Thanks.
Thank you, Brianna. And then also in attendance from last meeting, I have Deb Odell here with us, who works as a office engineer in Raymore Steel Division. I have Webb Moreland, who was also here last time, who's a superintendent for Raymore and will also be on the Rose Quarter project. So again, we've been hard at work. We'd like to really get into a good conversation with you in the breakouts over what we see as the historic barriers. I'm going to ask my team to introduce each one of these historic barriers that's in Subpart A, starting with Jennifer Erickson.
Thank you, Bill. The first historic barrier is ineffective outreach and the lack of early education about project opportunities. Will you forward the slide to the next bullet? Thank you. The potential solutions we see are first, host informational meetings. We think engaging and involving the community in the project early and let them know about the upcoming opportunities. And then the second potential solution we see is utilizing the green sheet tool to prescribe targeted solicitation. So Bill talked about it, the tool earlier, kind of the science. We're going to use this to target subs with the right opportunities.
Thanks, Jennifer. Next slide, please. Belinda, would you introduce this barrier?
Sure, thank you, Bill. The second barrier is cultural competency. The barrier of cultural competency just is one that I hold dear to my heart. As Jeff Moreland mentioned, I also believe that the stars aligned over the last 15 years for me to personally be here, from accidentally discovering construction engineering in college and then traveling 6 states to gain the necessary skills it takes to plan and build work. However, something I've found that is usually lacking between contractor and agency is this aspect of cultural competency. So typically I've learned to adjust accent, tone, delivery to fit in, because this is how somebody who looks like me has to stay in the industry and not get left behind. So our plan for cultural competency is to ensure that this barrier is not the burden of minorities, but instead for the project to find potential solutions. And in that, we need to add diversity to the team, and that's from the top down. And then also add cultural competency through creating a harassment-free workplace.
Thank you, Belinda. Tayo, would you take barrier number 3, please?
Yes, so barrier number 3 is excessive paperwork requirements and lack of back office support to small firms. This one hits home for me because when I first started at Raymore, this is exactly what we were going through. So let's talk about some solutions. Solution number 1, collaborate with project team to reduce excessive paperwork requirements. Solution number 2, utilize targeted technical assistance and project-based mentorship to help firms become more proficient at processing the necessary paperwork.
Thanks, Tayo. Terrence, you want to take barrier number 4?
Absolutely. So barrier number 4 is we're going to look at slow pay and cash flow constraints for small firms. So some of the possible solutions that we're working on is developing innovative methods for billing and payment schedules. We want to negotiate some unique subcontracts with our small individual firms and DBEs that meet their particular needs. So we want to look at fast tracking pay and being accurate to pay them for the work that they performed. Another thing we want to look at is allowing contractors to front load mobilization elements. We want to also look at ways that we can potentially relax on some retainage requirements and assist subcontractors in identifying compensable changes to the work. We really believe that if we can work on this particular barrier, that we can empower our DBEs to be efficient, to be profitable, and then after this project to be strong and continue to do work in our community.
Thanks, Terrence. Brianna, you want to take number 5?
Yep. So the 5th barrier is the lack of trust between the community and ODOT. There's inherent distrust between the community and ODOT due to the past performance and the negative impacts experienced by the community due to the original I-5 construction. Some of the potential solutions we've identified is through the use of the CMGC delivery method, we can creatively develop these work packages that are specifically suited to meet the need of the subcontracting community. And this method really allows for the transparent and open communication by informing and creating this open dialogue with the community of the project's commitments and how we plan to meet them. And to achieve this, we'll be utilizing these community advocacy membership groups and advisory groups such as this to not only hold our project accountable, but promote a successful project that includes significant DBE participation.
Thanks, Brianna. Next slide. So in the breakout groups, you know, we're primarily here to put in front of you a diversity plan and get your input and collaborate with you over a series of meetings and time to arrive at a good plan to move forward with. So we're primarily here to listen to your input tonight, but it's really important that this team that I've brought in front of you also has the ability to interact with you and gain the experience of being at the front end of a project like this. So from our end, I just want you to know that we're thankful for your commitment to being part of this process. We want to listen and hear you, but at the same time, we want to talk with you as well, and we want to have some interaction and make this a collaborative effort. So that's our presentation. I think these are the questions that are going to be asked in the breakout. Do you agree with the historical barriers presented today? Do you agree to our potential solutions, or should we expand on them? What other barriers have we missed, and what are their associated solutions? And what topics around DBE and subcontracting would you like time to deliberate in future meetings?
Great. Thank you, Bill and team, for that terrific presentation. Amber, I'm going to turn it over to you to provide some context of how the breakout group sessions will work and what time we'll be back.
Sure thing. Okay, so I'm just going to really quickly go through the process for COAC. Y'all know this, but COAC members, when you go to your reported breakout group, please designate a spokesperson from the COAC that will essentially report back on the things you talked about, any kinds of decisions or recommendations, etc. So they will be facilitating for the public who is listening via or watching via live stream. We will come back at around 5:08. For those of you that want to provide a comment. And so just so you remember, these are the breakout questions that we will be discussing in your individual breakout groups. Bill will be in one, Jeff will be in another, the COAC, each of the COAC members will be in each one, and ODOT, et cetera, will be in one breakout group and another. And now Aaron will do the da-da-da-da-da-da, and we'll go to our room.
Great, so we'll see everybody back here at 5:08.
All right, looks like a breakout group.
No, I'm in the same group. We haven't broke out yet.
Oh man, no did
we're supposed to be opposite each other, Bill. They haven't broke us out yet.
It's very suspenseful. Like, which group are you going to go to?
It's usually so seamless. I wonder what it takes. It's still here.
Well, this is an interesting process. We get picked one by one.
Appearing slowly. Sick. Mhm.
Can someone put me in room 2? I'm trying to add a different device here.
And we'll wait just a few more moments as folks are coming back into the room here. Just a few more moments.
We needed some more time.
Indeed.
Man, you put a group, man. Who put the groups together,
Yeah,
man? That
y'all
group,
gave me a
that was a tough group.
Yeah,
That
y'all gave me a tough
crack. That was a rough. But I still got. Hey, man, I got some things to say, man.
Out there? Is that Joe McFerrin?
Hey, man, I got some things to say, man. I got something to say about this, man. Y'all can't be getting me all hyped up, man. And Fleming that got me all. Come on, man. I ain't going out like that.
All right. Well, okay, everybody. Let's. We're gonna do report outs with each of the groups, and Jeff, why don't we start with your group? I think was it Pastor Hennessy who is reporting out? Pastor, did I get that accurate?
Did you actually prepare for that, Matt?
Yeah, I'm prepared for a part of it, but listen, with the group that we had, I know dang well I'm not doing this report by myself. I understand that completely. I really do.
Well, let me start out with saying, first of all, I got jumped by the Right Reverend Lee Fleming in the very beginning. So I just want to put that out there.
Exactly. No, I think that's really important. We also decided that Jeff needs to give most of us who are bald some of his hair off his chin. And we had a very good group, but I have to say, I can only say this because I said it in the group and I've got to say it here. I love Lee Fleming and I love the fact that we come together as a COAC. But I have to tell you, I was wondering where James Posey was going to be tonight. And I found out that part of him was in Lee Fleming, because Reverend Lee Fleming Posey came in acting like he was James Posey himself. And he did a very good job of distinguishing himself. I want you to know that. Amen. So you'd have been very proud. I think I can say this, and I will invite our group to also share. Number one, I don't think there was any question or concern about the barriers that were spoken to. I think we all agree those are great barriers. I think we do have some input, however, on some solutions. And that from a solution standpoint, there needs to be a bit more specificity. In fact, is it possible that you could put that up on the screen again so that we can walk through that? Can y'all do that for us for a moment? And then when I'm finished, I'm more than happy to invite others to, yeah, there you go. Ineffective outreach had for us some, in the solution part, is to really think about, and again, I borrowed this from Reverend Lee, is the importance of really looking at all of this in a 21st century approach. In other words, doing things that we haven't done before. We are grateful, and I really need to say this because I think ODOT has shown where they're really taking great pains to try to do a better job, listen to its community, and do things differently. And part of what we talked about in the ineffective outreach is really the idea of looking at compensation and what that means. Because oftentimes we are asking people to volunteer to do things without really thinking about the experience that they bring to the table and the time that it takes. And if I don't say that well enough, I know that Joe McFerrin will add to it. But I think that it's important, and I really think it's a great idea. And cultural competency, again, agreement there that that's a barrier. Very important that we do some work to add to that, to really not only speak to diversity, harassment-free environment, but really focus on how do we make sure that there is success, not just success for those who are doing the work, but the success for those who are owners. Remember, this whole thing is a wonderful experiment, but if we're good at it, we're going to be able to take it all over the state so that the opportunities are there for even greater expansion outside the Portland area, right? So there's more work. I'm just going to say double click in there. There's some more work to be done. Kenichi may have some stuff that she wants to add there too. In excessive paperwork, again, we see that as an issue. I was about to speak to that issue when we saw 9 seconds on the screen. So whoever does that the next time, can y'all give us a 60-second warning versus a 9-second one? But part of my thought there was really think out of the box on this one and recognize from a strictly ability to have staff to walk through these things and get this done, how we do technical assistance differently than it's been done, okay? I can speak more to that later, but I'm sure I don't have that much more time. We did talk about the issue of slow pay. I'm sorry, we didn't talk specifically about the issue of slow pay and cash flow. We did talk about lack of trust. One of the things that we really need to think about here that came up in our discussion was how you set together expectations and how you work together to make sure that we are working together and progressing together when it comes to the expectations that are set. And if there are issues, raise those issues. But when it comes to lack of trust, this is so big that it literally permeates everything that we're talking about doing here. And one of the big things is that we got to make a promise and we got to stick to the promise. We've got to check on the promise, create accountability for the promise, and deliver on the promise. All of these things have to happen. And that's part of what the message is there. And things that we felt needed to be stated that aren't here are the issue of financial literacy, capacity, sustainability. And by this, we mean the importance of really making sure that we are both working with people and helping educate people and create opportunity for there to be even more. We talked about accessing labor and a few other things, but I'm going to pause for a minute. Oh, one other quick thing that Reverend Lee Posey brought up was the issue of the goals. What does it mean to have 18 to 22% when it comes to one of our overall things? That wasn't part of our work today, but we wanted to raise it because it was talked about. And we also added or talked about adding the idea of an aspirational goal, whatever that would be, so that we are paying attention to that. And in addition to being specific about Black, Latinx, let's not forget our brothers and sisters in the Asia Pacific Islander area, also specifically for people in the indigenous area. And let us specify what DBE means and a couple of other things. So I'm going to pause for a moment if I can, Janelle, and offer the opportunity for other members quickly of the team to speak if there is something.
And maybe just another 60 seconds if folks have other comments so we can get to the other group.
Yeah, I'd just like to add real quick that I think that we should consider some level of compensation for folks' time, both with respect to outreach and community participation.
Good. Joe, brother, I thought I got you, man. I didn't.
You did, JW. You did. I was listening carefully, but I want to address that.
Joe got to put exclamation.
Joe is going to be Joe, and I love Joe for that. But I want to address that specificity in the goal, because again, DBE can be anything. If we when I read the beginning of the plan, it started great. At the end of the plan, it had something that's near and dear to my heart. But when it talked about that 18 to 22%, it fell flat for me. Because again, intentionality. Have we done capacity study? Have we intentionally gone out and recruited firms? Have we intentionally gone out there and met with them and drawn them in and invited them in? This would preclude the thing that Joe is talking about. And then we're able to say, we want to say for DBE participation, we want this number African-American, this number Native American, this Asian Pacific Islander, and we'll have an intelligent plan. Now that when you start talking about green sheet tool,
right,
you're not just throwing out their slick conversation to the community. You have some actual stuff to say to them. Here's what we're going to do. And as the contractor, you can do that.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry to interject, everybody. I know we could probably spend another 30 minutes on this particular section. It's clear that it was.
John, could I beg the fact that we've got two women that are on our group?
Oh,
the men talking.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Christine and Kenichi, did you all have something quick to say as well?
I think Christine, I'll speak for us. I think you did a great job capturing most of the comments, Reverend Hennessy. I think the only other barrier that we noted that I didn't hear was a steep learning curve for small firms to really be able to do this work, and also honestly for the mid-sized firms as well. But you did a
Excellent.
fantastic job. Thank you.
No, bless you. That's great. Christine, did you have anything you wanted to say?
Only that I added about the living wage jobs for the workers in the community. They're the ones who needs to be lifted up and need the work and the money. Thank
Right. You. And John L., just know the only reason why I did this tonight is I was voluntold right from the beginning from Lee Fleming Posey, Pastor Hennessy's going to be the one to report tonight. So thank you.
Very, very good. Nicely done, Reverend. And with that, we'll turn over to the next group. Bill, I think you were the facilitator for that. So I'll hand it over to you.
Excuse me, I was. God, I'm not sure we were quite as lively as that other group, but we did get input from all of the COAC members, and I think that Felicia, how'd you do on the notes?
I did pretty good. So I'm not going to repeat what Pastor Hennessy said, but here are a couple highlights that are not repetitive. Stephen talked about how in today's market, a lot of firms are COVID certified firms, but most minority firms are not. What is the engagement going to look like for those firms? And also talked about how can we have some sort of survey out to contractors of color around the state around the barriers. Instead of making assumptions about the barriers, can we do some sort of survey out to POC companies? James Posey talked about what are we going to do to make sure that Raymore can actually do their job and not be stuck in the past? And so he really wanted to talk about how can they be successful in laying down the tracks to be successful. But at the same time, how do we hold other entities outside of construction who have led to the gentrification accountable, like realtors and banks? And then Art said, how do we deal with the lack of trust among especially small firms and the cash flow issues they have and the impacts and on the job site? And how can we hold GCs accountable to really build that trust and the understanding of working with the subs? Tana talked about bonding issue, especially for women-owned and minority-owned businesses. And how are we going to deal with that? Because they have issues of getting access to capital, which in turn also has issues to bonding and insurance. So how are we going to help those businesses? Katrina talked about really, again, she too talked about cash flow, but she also talked about how a lot of small firms don't have an HR department. So how do we deal with anti-harassment? And so that was something that Katrina brought up. And overall, another thing that James wanted to end and wanted everybody to talk about was this green sheet, and being efficient and effective. Really around how do we build the railroads? How do we have this sort of overlay? And he also talked about having some sort of company going around to help other businesses, like a Seattle model. He talked about in Seattle how they actually have a roving entity that helps businesses address some of their barriers, and maybe we can have some lessons learned. And so really making sure we deal with that. And the last thing that was a running theme among the group was cultural capacity equals change in workplace culture. So when we're talking about any kind of workplace culture change, we're also talking about providing the capacity to make it happen. And so from that, I'm going to, and also one other thing that Art brought up, which I think is a really important point, is that sometimes GCs, general contractors, are slow to pay or turn in their invoices, which make it difficult for subs because subs are so cash dependent. And so those were some of the highlights I wanted to say came from our group. And so for James or Art or Tana or Katrina or Stephen, if you would like to add anything else, please do.
Yeah, hey, this is James, and you know, I tried to, you know, maybe be a little mute on this, but the truth of the matter is that I think we need to incentivize the behavior that we want to see. I'll say that again. We want to incentivize the.
I think we lost
Okay.
Mr. Posey here. If he comes, you know,
So
hopefully he can log back in.
Yeah, so what he means by it is he has a model that he wants to for the group to look at that has done that sort of incentivizing and also has a DBE overlay. So that's what he is talking about. So he wants to be able to present that to the group as well.
Great. Any other last minute thoughts from that, from your group, Felicia?
And please highlight, I was taking notes, so that's what I was trying not to say the same things as Pastor Hennessy, so trying to get new things in there as well.
Sure. Well, thanks to both groups for a very rich and dynamic discussion. Super helpful as I know the CMGC works to integrate your feedback and refine their plan. And again, this is won't be the last time we'll have an opportunity of discussing this topic. This is just part one of a number of part series. So without further ado, we're going to switch gears now and talk about our independent cover assessment work. We are running a little bit behind. So Gina Woolley, I'm hoping that I am turning it over to you to lead us through this next section. Gina?
Thanks so much, John-El. Good evening, everybody. It's great to see you all. It's been a long year, and our team is grateful to be here tonight. We are going to present tonight an abbreviated version of our community workshops. Although it is not a requirement that we come before COAC with our work. We felt that because there are so many people on COAC that have deep roots to a historic Black Albina, that it would be to our benefit to actually be able to present to this group and get your feedback before we move into developing scenarios. Our first community workshops were completed last week, and the objective of these workshops is to help understand the community's vision for what it would like to see in this neighborhood and on the covers that would support restorative justice and provide benefit to the Black community specifically and the larger community overall. So what we're going to do tonight is basically help you understand what our charge is and how we will be doing our work. And then we are going to essentially talk a little bit about neighborhood context in which this work is going to take place. And finally, we are going to, is it Morgan? Morgan, are you running the slideshow? Could we change to the agenda, please? Yes. Then we will be, we'll take quick questions, not about anything other than just if there was anything that was talked about in the framing and the neighborhood context that people don't understand, we would want clarification then. And then we're going to go into the meat of our program, which is really about potential programming and outcomes. And then we hope to have a discussion and feedback from you about what you think are the most important things, places, spaces, and types of facilities that need to be created as part of the cover work. And then we will wrap up essentially and tell you what our next steps are. So what would be helpful is we won't be taking questions except at the point where I pause for questions after the framing and neighborhood context. And then if you have other questions, please take your notes down as we're going through this. And we can certainly address them when we get into the discussion portion of this. We have a very limited time frame to do this work with you tonight. And so we want to be able to get through our presentation and leave as much time to hear your feedback as possible. So with that, without further ado, I'm going to introduce our team that you'll be hearing from tonight. This is our ICA team. You're going to be hearing from Nolan tonight. You will be hearing from Stephen, Olivia, and that's it. We have also in the room, Charles, Morgan, and Swin are in the room. So we've got an abbreviated team tonight as well, here to present for you. So without any further ado, I would like to turn it over to Nolan to familiarize you with the work that we're doing. Nolan?
Thanks, Gina, and thank you to everybody for having us with your committee tonight and giving us your time. Next slide. Before we get into anything, I want to talk through a few terms that you'll be hearing this evening in our work, and we'll try not to use acronyms if we can, but just in case we do, the independent cover assessment is the work that we're doing, and I'll talk a little bit more about what the scope of that work is. NEPA refers to the National Environmental Protection Act, and it requires the environmental assessment, which is often referred to as the EA. Within that EA is something called the area of potential impact, and that is often referred to as the API. I'll show you a graphic of that in a moment. And then two terms that we'll particularly be using and have been using as part of this work session are programming and scenarios. When we talk about programming, we typically mean uses of land or buildings. And so programming could include retail, it could include housing, it could include office space or park space. In fact, it could even include a bike lane or a tennis court. So programming just means how are we using space? And then scenarios refers in particular to three potential outcomes that we'll be studying through our process, but it's essentially a composite of those different programming elements, the physical space implications of those programming elements. And so it's essentially a snapshot of what is the idea of a design that may be possible. And we'll generate these scenarios and then compare them against one another and against the community vision that's been shared with us. Next slide. So this is the design. Many of you will have seen it. That includes all the assumptions in the environmental assessment. For the purposes of our study, we call this the base case. So we would be generating scenarios in addition to this scenario. And in the blue dash here, you see some open spaces that have been defined as the highway covers in the environmental assessment. And so this is our starting place. It is the project as ODOT understands it and its stakeholders understand it today. Next. This slide in black outline describes the area of potential impact. It's essentially the project limits, and that includes both the areas that will be developed as part of the project or the areas that the project will cover when it's done. But it also includes some areas that may be affected or impacted as part of construction. So that's why it's called the area of potential impact. It's essentially the furthest extent that the project would impact over the course of its construction. Next. So what do we mean when we say highway covers? We're using these two examples to show some of the range that we refer to when we say this. On the left is Clyde Warren Park in Dallas. It's a 5.2 acre public park that really connects between the downtown and the arts district in downtown Dallas. It includes a children's park, dog park, great lawn, 5 water features, and a small 6,000 square foot building that contains a restaurant and a performance pavilion. On the other end of the spectrum is Fenway Center in Boston, 90,000 square foot deck over the freeway, $1 billion 2-tower complex with lab and office spaces, and using a 99-year lease of air rights from the Massachusetts Department of Transportation. And it's very, very intensive use of these highway covers with buildings. And so it can really be anything in between. And what's important is not that we're going to do one of these two things. These were the solutions that were appropriate for these cities. But our highway cover scenarios will include the elements that our community deems appropriate or needed. And what they all have in common is that they are ultimately connecting the city rather than having the city be divided by highway infrastructure. Next. So our study has three fundamental questions that we have been asked to help answer. One is, how can this project serve community aspirations on the highway covers and the areas immediately adjacent to the highway covers within that area of potential impact, which is, again, often referred to as the API. The second is, what are the modifications to the current design and configuration that may be needed to reflect a broader community vision for development of the project area? And then finally, we'll need to think about architectural and engineering considerations that help to promote economic development, growth potential, consistent with the community's vision. Next. To do this, as I mentioned, in addition to the base case, we will be creating about 3 scenarios. First is, what could you do within that existing area of potential impact? The second scenario will be, what could you do that might be really great, but requires going beyond that existing area of potential impact? And then the third scenario is, after the executive steering committee and the community has seen those first 2 scenarios, they'll come back and tell us, we like or we don't like what you've studied, we'd like you to study something else. And so the criteria for that would then be determined at that time, some other third idea. Next. So this is a diagram that is not important for you to read every word of tonight in this moment, but it's intended to just highlight the role of work session 1, our purpose in work session 1, and how it relates to the rest of our plan. Work sessions are the fundamental milestone of the work that we're doing. And we essentially, each one includes an ESC meeting, meeting of the Historic Albina Advisory Board, and 2 community workshops. And so that's what we did last week. We had those meetings. The first work session is focused on listening and really assessing what is the community visions to inform our generation of scenarios. And so our goal was to solidify understanding of that community vision, present some opportunities, which you'll see tonight, to achieve some goals that have been articulated in the community to date. We've been gathering feedback to inform development of scenarios, which we'll continue doing with you tonight, and then gathering feedback on how to measure performance. The next work session will be one in which we present some preliminary ideas, get feedback on those, which resonate, which don't. And then finally, in work session 3, we'll present some evaluated and refined scenarios, which may result in a recommendation from the Executive Steering Committee to the Oregon Transportation Commission. Next slide. So in terms of framing, just want to put it in a sentence form. Our goal really is to understand what are the types of uses, spaces, and character that are most important, in particular to the Black Historic Albina community members. And really, you will help us to understand how we can inform and create a new sense of community, place, and belonging through the design of highway covers that meets restorative justice goals. Next. Our method from doing this is really to collect as many good ideas as possible, and to use an example of how we do this. We'll click to the next slide. And we start with all the ideas and we collect them in workshops and committee meetings like this. And then at some point, they have to be translated into actual design of buildings and open spaces and sidewalks and other kind of facilities on the ground. So click to the next. This is a project that many of us worked on, Director Park downtown, and the elements may in general terms be described as a hotel and some play space and possibly some seating. And click, when you get to the design stage, those turn out to be much more specific. So where people wanted play, it turns into a chessboard. Where people wanted job diversity, that may be an office building with retail at the ground floor. Where people wanted seating, that may turn into movable chairs. So that's an idea of how the big long-range visioning ideas early in the process end up translating down the line to more specific designs. Next. So that's the process of what we're doing. Want to share a little bit with you, and we'll go through this quickly because so many of you know this area so well, but it is important just to validate with you the way we have seen this area and its various components, and for you to help us make sure that we're on the right track. Next. So this is a historical image of the community as it was in 1938, looking north toward Broadway and the Broadway Bridge. We include this just to make sure we're recognizing that the character really was different historically. Both the scale of the houses, of the streets, of the trees is very different from it is today, how it is today with major entertainment facilities and really a much larger scale and a different kind of urban energy. Next. This is the same year, 1938, but further north, looking south toward the residential neighborhood and the Broadway Bridge. In the foreground is the intersection of North Russell and North Flint, and the future site of Harriet Tubman Middle School and Lillis Albina Park is shown dashed in. And we're also showing the future alignment of I-5 that came through the area and is now sitting directly adjacent to the school. Next. So this is sort of what we're calling the area of influence in addition to the area of potential impact. And the reason we like to look at this scale is just to be clear about the fact that as we think about the role of highway covers, we can't do so without understanding the potential positive impacts or negative impacts we'd like to avoid to the areas around it. And so it's always a reminder that we are connecting two sides of the city. And so as we think about what those scenarios may be, we'll think about what it is that we're connecting on each side. Next. So these are the adjacent neighborhoods around the interchange with the Albina Vision boundary shown in orange. Lower Albina is the neighborhood to the north of the Broadway Bridge, bound by I-5 and the Fremont Bridge. Boise and Elliott are directly next to the highway with Irvington further east and the Lloyd District south and east as well. And this is really to make sure we're keeping in track of the context here. And then of course, it's a little hard to see, but the API is still there, dashed in black line. Next. These are the major streets and existing transit lines, and we've labeled some major landmarks for orientation in blue. So you can see in the foreground, the Coliseum and the Moda Center, the Rose Quarter Transit Center to the south, and then moving north, the Portland Public Schools headquarters site, and across I-5, Harriet Tubman Middle School, and further north, Legacy Emmanuel Medical Center. Next. Not going to read all of these, but we have been keeping track of existing assets and amenities and services in the neighborhood. What's important about this is we've been having a lot of conversation about the fact that many of the members of the African American community who have historic connections to this area are no longer here. And there are many who are here, and many of whom are not here still come back because there are still cultural, social, economic reasons to be here and to connect to businesses and family. And so we wanted to mark where are those, what is their relationship to the project area, to the potential area of the highway covers. And so this represents our understanding of those. We've been really fortunate to have these community work sessions where people have suggested those that are important to them to add on. And so I would invite you, if there are major and important community assets or services that you recognize as being very important that we're not showing, we're interested to hear that. So we'll take a moment to pause here and open it up just to make sure. I've had a lot of words come out. I want to make sure that they make sense. And if there's any questions about our process or the big picture framing of this work session, let me know.
So if any of the group of the COAC members have questions about what's been presented in terms of what our work is, or the geographic area that we're going to be focused on relative to doing that work, and what else in that geography is going to inform our work, this would be the time to ask those questions.
And just to interject, if folks, COAC members, if you could use the raised hand feature, that would help me to track who to call on.
Yeah.
And Mr. Polsey.
Yeah, I want to know, first of all, have you all did an economic assessment about how this would look in terms of trying to rectify the harm that was done to the African American community? I really want to know about ownership as the final goal of the covers in terms of what Black people would obtain relative to ownership, and whether or not you all can assess whether there's been any kind of economist assessment of what was lost over this period of time and who lost it, and what was the actual market value of what was lost.
Thank you
So
for
James,
that.
there isn't, it isn't part of our scope to do the economic analysis that you're talking about. However, one of the things that ownership has come out a lot. It's been one of the primary themes in our workshops. And one of the things that I should say about the scenarios that will get developed is they will not just be about programming, but will also be about governance and public policies and financing that has to be aligned with that programming to really bring forth the community's vision. And that will probably include the notion of ownership, whether it's in a land trust or for surplus parcels, or, we'll look at all of that as part of our final scenario development.
Well, Gina, as you well know, all across the country, Black people have been screwed. Gentrification, redlining, the whole 9 yards. I don't have to explain it to you. And so this represents an opportunity to make an assessment about how do we recover? How do at some point we begin to have some parity, some equity in terms of how we recover as a community around our economic conditions to make things whole for Black people. If you all miss that, then all this cover and what you do, beautifying, and how you intersect with a Abana vision is all for naught. You all who are in the leadership role of trying to assess this need to make this imperative.
Comment registered. It will be part of our charge. We've made it part of our charge. I just want to say that to you. And when we get to the next step of our process, which is bringing back potential scenarios, I think you'll see as we develop our work. We're very early, we're collecting ideas, and what we're here tonight is to collect your ideas, and this is an important idea. So thank you for raising that point. And it is registered, and we are going to be about trying to help provide that kind of restoration to the community, to the Black community specifically.
Great. And Reverend Hennessy? You're muted, Reverend.
Thank you, John L. And again, Nolan, great job. Gina, good to see you doing the great work that you do. And I just wanted two comments I wanted to make. Number one, on the map where you have a number of places listed, the red cross right in front of our church, I think, is a miss. And I think it's very important given the role that they play as well. And then perhaps not for tonight, but at a different time, if we could understand better, at least I feel for myself, I can give better input if I know what the load factors are as it relates to what can be on the covers. Because one of the wonderful pictures you showed was the Boston picture. And wow, what a wonderful thing they've done. But I don't have an understanding that that is something that we could replicate, as I understand it anyway. But at whatever point, it would be great to know what is possible,
Yep,
right?
That's our job. Thank you for that. That's our job, is to help articulate what is possible, and then what are the engineering constraints to that? What may be the financial strategies necessary to make it possible? So those are definitely part of our work.
I appreciate that. And then just from a standpoint of understanding, if I recall, Gina, you did an amazing work a few years ago for, and I can't recall, was it Legacy or whomever, to help us understand better what happened when the you understand more better than I do.
Relocation, the manual relocation.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's what it was. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether that report is still in circulation or a way for us to get it, but I recall you getting some really good data and understanding that was different than sometimes the narrative that we hear. And again, not for tonight, but if there's an opportunity for us to get that information in the future, I think it would be helpful for all of us to understand better.
Registered, point registered, and I think I can dig out a summary for that and provide it if that's of value.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful, Janelle, and to the group. Yeah, and Gina was the one that did it, which again gives, in my mind, a lot of validity to what that study is about.
It's really, that work is really what teed up the Williams and Russell block.
Yeah.
Put it in play.
Other comments, questions from members of the COAC?
All right, if not, if we have no additional questions at this point, what I'd
Gina,
like to do.
Oh, I have a question, Gina. It's Stephen. Is the Albina Vision part of the other group, the historic Albina group that you guys have?
No, they didn't. They chose not to participate. We invited them, and they are going through their own process. And there will be probably some opportunity to interface, to set up a set of very transparent interfaces where some information is exchanged, but they did not participate in the process.
Gotcha. All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I hope y'all will be able to reconcile that. That's crazy for us not to intersect with those people and try to make something happen that we all can collaborate on.
I think it's going to all come together at the end of the line. I do. So let me keep us moving so we'll have as much time as possible to talk. So this is the moment. This workshop, as you know, our first workshop was about listening and understanding the community's vision. And James has made a comment, Pastor Hennessy's made a comment about things that are important for us to think about as relative to this. What we want to do tonight, what we're here in front of you tonight to do, is to really say, without thinking about what are all the constraints, just to vision what would be important to this community, to the Black community specifically, to be able to see happen down in the Rose Quarter, the lower Albina Rose Quarter area. And that's on and off the covers in the areas adjacent to the covers, because there will be parcels adjacent to the covers that will be eventually, once the project is completed, will be available for redevelopment. So what we really want from you is you to use your magic wand when, after Stephen and Olivia get done presenting. We're going to share with you examples of things that have been done in other Black communities around the country. We're also going to speak to some of the governance structures and financing structures that made those kind of revitalization projects possible and have allowed them to really ultimately serve the community they were developed to serve. So with that, I want to turn it over to Stephen, and he is going to share with you some of these examples, and Olivia will chime in on the governance related to some of them. Stephen?
Gina, and good evening, members. It's great to be with another group of passionate stakeholders, and just judging from the report outs on your breakouts, really heady folk, man, just really hitting a lot of those important nails on the head. Through my own life experience, which I have no time to share with you tonight, I've been there, and I understand about bonding and how important that is to move things forward, and all the barriers that have to be overcome. So great job in highlighting and surfacing those issues. Now we're at a different kind of point with you all, where we want to share, like so many of our communities historically that fell to the big eraser known as the Federal Highways Act and urban renewal. The Lower Albina community was erased by the freeway and the public and the Moda Center and the other public buildings. And the Oregon Department of Transportation has stopped their process and asked us to come in and do an independent assessment of what they had come up with and to measure that against the wants, needs, desires of community members and stakeholders, which is the process that we're involved in right now. And I think it would be worth saying, after working through the possibilities, to really talk about the nuance between possibility and feasibility, right? So these highway covers of themselves cannot deliver restorative justice. They can create a landscape upon which restorative justice can occur, but to do that, first, it starts with dreaming high, aiming high, dreaming big about what do y'all think would make this community a whole community again that is centered on the lived experiences of the former residents and the Black cultural need to have a place that we can identify as our own, that we can operate in with ownership, that we can create wealth in, we can have health in, and we can have cohesion among our community. And those are the three themes, outcomes that I'm going to try to at least prompt some conversation about by showing you how similar things have occurred in other Black communities in places like Detroit and Los Angeles and others, understanding that Portland and Lower Albina is a unique place unto itself. And so we're not saying that these are right for you, but we're just showing you things to help stimulate your thought and your dreaming about, well, yeah, what do we want to be our flavor here? How are we going to do this? So I'll describe a number of these situations, and then Olivia will lean in with some of the finance structures and governance structures that are required to be able to bring these things to fruition. And Nolan, if you choose to lean in on matters of urban design and support those kinds of ideas, that would be great. But in the interest of time, I know we're running a little behind. I'm going to try to hit it and quit it. So let's go.
Let's go.
Right. So, these three outcomes that we talked about, wealth, health, and cohesion, they operate as a holistic system that is really the way to get a strong and vibrant community, and all of that being at the heart of restorative justice. Again, these images you're going to see are different places, but they have outcomes that you may relate to or may appreciate. Some things that we show you, you may say, that's just not us and that's not for us. But we'll lead you through these, and again, Olivia will provide some additional information about how to bring these about, or how these ones we're showing you have been brought about. Okay, next slide, please. All right, here we go. So the businesses that you see in the upper two images are in Detroit, and they're in an area that had been really disinvested in over the years, but you may be aware that Detroit has been experiencing a great comeback in the last 5-6 years. And here we have what's called the Avenue of Fashion. These are Black-owned businesses predominantly that you see in both the left-hand slide and the right-hand slide. And on the left, this is a recently completed improvement to the public realm of this neighborhood where we expanded the sidewalks. We made them wider because the business owners said we need places where we can spill our operation out into the public realm, create vibrancy in the community. And with new trees and new planters and sidewalk amenities and facade improvements, the Avenue of Fashion has really come roaring back because, there have been so much pent up demand over the years that now that our folks are operating and doing it in a way that's attractive, folks are just, and not just Black folks, but the whole, community of people are racing to experience this part of our culture that we're now able to celebrate and broadcast in the public realm. It happens in places like you see below in the market. If we have a desire to have incubators, smaller Black-owned businesses that operate and can attract the general public as well as the local folks, we need a place to house them. It's a very vibrant kind of environment that we create. And on the lower right, this is part of a historic Black YMCA in Los Angeles that was designed by the famous Black architect Paul Williams in 1923 and had fallen into disrepair. It was converted to an affordable housing project with wraparound services, and the building, the existing building, you see here, a job training center that was part of that program. Olivia, do you want to weigh in at all?
I think Nolan will take the top two here, and I'll weigh in on the next slide.
Okay, so let's go next slide.
Oh, I do have a few comments.
Sorry, no.
The last one. Yeah. So throughout this, there are photos that are highlighted with blue and featuring an icon representing urban design program elements and strategies. I'll speak to those, describing how they support the different types of program elements that Stephen and Olivia are talking about. In particular, these images show good examples of pedestrian-friendly design. The buildings and sidewalk in front of them are designed in ways that reinforce a feeling of safety and pleasantness with materials that either animate or add character, like brick pavers or paint colors. So streets can be designed in ways that enable or encourage walking, like the widened sidewalks and seating shown in the top left photo, or enhanced landscape. Active uses like retail or dining at the ground floor buildings can also contribute to safe, pleasant walking environments, as is shown on the top right image.
Yeah, and if you all ever get to Detroit, you got to go there and try Cuzzo's Chicken and Waffles, because it's, kind of holding up well. All right, next slide. So here we have examples of entrepreneurship opportunities at a local scale, which in addition to providing wealth creation through business ownership, provide opportunities for local employment. The lower two photos, which I'm proud to say I took of colleagues in Detroit who are working in Black-owned businesses that are, satisfying the needs of the local community, but going beyond and being attractive to the broader community. And in the case of the center lower slide, actually draw tourists from all over. I remember being there one day and a busload of Japanese tourists unloaded, ran into the Sister Pie establishment and cleaned out their entire case. So before I could even get a muffin or anything, they were all gone. But hey, the cash register was ringing. So a really great business in Detroit. And then, the enterprise, the Evergreen Cooperative on the lower left, I think Olivia will talk a little bit about that. That's near and dear as well, because a colleague of mine was instrumental in standing that up in Cleveland to allow local residents to start working in businesses that were satisfying needs of local institutional anchors in the neighborhood that had not been sharing any resources with the neighborhood. And these businesses now serve as, in this case, a coffee shop. There's a greenhouse business that provides leafy greens to the local hospital and universities. And then the Evergreen linen service that satisfies all the linen needs of the local hospital.
So as Stephen mentioned, these are examples of ways to build community wealth and ownership through opportunities for entrepreneurs and employees. The images along the top are programs run by the Black Community Development Corporation in West Louisville, Kentucky, which include a garden which provides opportunities for entrepreneurs to grow produce and sell them at a local farmer's market. And then to the left, an opportunity, what's called an opportunity corner, which provides small spaces for small businesses that are just launching in the neighborhood. And as Stephen mentioned, around Evergreen Cooperatives provides opportunities for employee ownership, which both sets up employees for long-term ownership and to have a stake in the companies they work for, as long as long-term business continuity. So CDCs, community development corporations, LDCs, local development corporations, and employee co-ops are the kinds of governance tools that can be used to preserve ownership and build wealth for entrepreneurs and workers as we think about these programs in Albina.
Great. Next slide, please.
Those examples are very different cities. I partially grew up in Detroit, 84% Black. Louisville's like 25% Black. And also Detroit to this day is still the most segregated city in the country. Have you looked at how those dynamics would play out differently here in Portland, which is one of the least segregated cities in the country, but a very small
that
Black
comment that has come up before in our workshop, and we will look at that. We are aware of other examples that are going on locally, like Rockwood Rising. Living Cully has a number of initiatives that involve 4 or 5 different CDCs. Right now, we're just trying to show you various examples that the team was able to put together, and all they do is provide ideas that are still possible. The governance structures that we're talking about here are still possibilities. And what I would hope is that we can get people to refrain from commenting, or we will never get through this presentation. So
gotcha. Sorry about that, too.
If we could just hold the comments to the very end, I would be very grateful, or else we will simply run out of time before we really get an opportunity to hear back from you. So if you have those kind of comments, though, we want to hear them. We want to answer your questions. Just hold them until we get done.
Right.
Stephen, keep moving.
Mr. Green, just to establish my bona fides, I worked from 2016 to late 2018 as the urban design director for the city under Mayor Duggan. And so I'm definitely speaking from personal passion and experience of what we were able to achieve against all odds. And the fact that it's an 84 or now 80% Black city does not make achieving these projects any easier than it would in Portland, certainly. I think the structures underlying it all are there to be molded and crafted for the specific, group of constituents. So we'll talk more about that. Here's a great example of, where some serious wealth can be created through real estate development, and the fact that these 3 people are among a group of Black developers in Detroit who are taking a lot of risk, but in exchange for some potentially very high, healthy rewards by providing mixed-use projects in communities of Detroit that have suffered for long times and are now on the rebound. And Dan Gilbert, Quicken Loans, they brought the first wave of wealth back into the city, and he certainly didn't bring a bunch of us along with him. So in order to make sure that the city that endured 40, 50 years of disinvestment sees Black folks participating wholly in this, these 3 are among those who are evidence of that movement forward. Next. Right, so, the opportunity to create housing, to restore residential community back to the area is something that is certainly a possibility. And whether or not people would feel like they wanted to live on top of the highway cover or in the adjacent neighborhood, perhaps, where opportunity sites could be developed as housing, both market and affordable, depending on the interests of the neighborhood, are important to be able to have a fully functioning neighborhood where you can live in proximity to where you work, where you recreate, where you play and pray. Those are things to be considered, and certainly kinds of projects that we want to explore with this community. The fact that projects like Project Row House on the upper left, or the project beneath it in West Hollywood, California, that are projects that are of a high design quality. We deserve as good a design as any other community, and perhaps with a cultural signature that really illustrates how that is about us and for us, right? So in terms of how that can be brought about, childcare on the lower right, you have to go to work. So you wanna, if you're a parent, you wanna be able to leave your children somewhere where they'll be safe, well taken care of, and be stimulated by their environment. And this is a childcare center I designed for an area of Southern California, which had a great success in terms of elevating the level of interaction between children and their environment. And we heard from parents how effective that was. So we need to put all these pieces together to allow for healthy communities. Olivia?
Yeah, and Stephen pointed out Project Row Houses on the top left, and you'll see a couple other examples as we go of services that Project Row Houses provides along with providing housing. It's another example of the kinds of service that a community development corporation or a local development corporation, a nonprofit organization can provide in both delivering assets that can help to build community wealth along with programming. To the right of that image is a couple pictures of projects representing the work of the Africatown Community Land Trust in Seattle, which both represents an opportunity in a land trust or land bank to preserve ownership of land and assets, and also to deliver the tools and training for the community to take on ownership, development, and really be active in the ownership of land and the area around their community. In particular, the Africatown Community Land Trust is focused on the Central District in Seattle. So these are the kinds of governance entities that could be appropriate as we think about community wealth as it is expressed in sort of land or asset ownership.
Great. Okay, next slide, please. So here we'll pivot from wealth to community health and talk about, the different ways health manifests itself, right? There's mental health, physical health, spiritual health. They all come together in various forms. And in this case, we're looking at, how can we bring literally healthcare into the community that's culturally sensitive and appropriate. We've all heard about what the statistics tell us about how Black people are treated through the healthcare systems, that particularly Black women who express symptoms are not really listened to and respected and often sent away and, experience, much worse health outcomes than their white peers. And here we see two clinics on the lower slides that were built by Kaiser Permanente with the intention of being neighborhood sensitive in the community. And that could be something that Laura Albina decides is appropriate and desirable.
And the images at the top really demonstrate how delivering on community health can be part of some of the other programs that we were talking about. At the top, a mental health program that is delivered along with a young mother's residential program through Project Row Houses, which delivers, again, housing and services. And then in the top right, the Hope Wellness Center, delivered by the Black Community Development Corporation in West Louisville, both delivers a space and health programming that is culturally sensitive and appropriate for the community surrounding it, but also a space for Black practitioners to practice and grow their businesses.
Great. Next slide, please. So, our communities have famously referred to as food deserts, where, there's always liquor stores that sell, sugared sodas and Cheetos or whatever. But we also know that we have a legacy of growing, whether it's in our backyards or whether it's in neighborhood community gardens, or even in larger garden facilities like the one that's illustrated in the upper right. Mudtown Farms is a project I was involved in Watts in Southern California, where the nonprofit Watts Labor Community Action Committee stood up this Mudtown Farms project at several full blocks that provides infrastructure and farming plots for individuals and for local farmers who can, again, as you saw in a previous slide, sell at farmers markets and really bring fresh food and produce into the neighborhood. And we see this Philadelphia Farmers Market below, which is a nice illustration of how, if you provide it, we will come. And I think that, this is just a great opportunity to combine, health with the spiritual aspects of growing. And I think that, it can be supported through urban design. And I think Nolan may lean in on and talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, in addition to providing space to grow healthy food, the physical presence of community gardens can also activate neighborhoods and commercial areas and provide opportunities for social interaction. So they in addition to the things Stephen mentioned, establishing a shared sense of ownership, they strengthen community identity. And there's evidence that In addition to the physical health benefits, they reinforce mental health. And so that they're sort of like a hybrid, sharing the benefits of parks, community gathering spaces, and businesses.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Next slide, please. So then there's the, recreational aspect of having places for our young people to skateboard or play ball, to ride bicycles, or to simply enjoy a quality green open space. Every neighborhood, and this is a lesson again from Detroit, that every neighborhood should have at its center a quality green open space, something that allows people to do everything from walk and run to simply enjoy the pastoral nature of the environment and have some spiritual healing through knowing that they have a place that is safe and within their reach. Again, that same nonprofit that did Mudtown Farms built a skate park on their property. It's a very secure and safe space for Black and Latino kids to come and show off their skills. And it's attracted quite a bit of attention. It was featured on local news programs from time to time. And on the lower right, back to Mr. Green, Detroiter, in the heart of downtown Detroit, the streets are closed off, the pavement is painted. You don't need a big neon sign saying brothers and sisters welcome. I mean, they know this is their place where they can come, and surrounded by people in suits and ties like I was, eating my lunch, watching, people, try to become legends in their own mind, out there balling hard. So this is a great asset for this part of downtown. And what it does is, as much as it invites our young people to come be part of the downtown scene, it also acculturates those people, both new to Detroit and longtime residents, to the fact that this is a city that is welcoming all of its residents. And it puts that welcome mat out literally in the form of what you see here. I think that, well, we're in the interest of time. We can keep flowing. So here's to, again, as far as going now to community cohesion, what communicates a sense of cultural identity and ownership. And on the left, a major art installation that was unveiled celebrating the work of artist Charles McGee in Detroit. This is happened about 3 years ago. Charles passed away, I think, last year in his 90s, but he was prolific up until the end. And when I attended this opening, there were hundreds of residents that came out to support and to celebrate not only him, but the celebration of his work, holding a space in the public realm for people to really see it and see it for what it is, appreciate it for its cultural significance. And it sits proudly in front of the Charles Wright African American Museum. So this is a way that culture can be converted through art into the public realm and communicate messages about significance and ownership and identity. And on the right, we see the recently completed plan for Destination Crenshaw. These are rendered images that you're looking at to take this 10-block, mile-long area in South Central LA, the Crenshaw district, which many understand to be the epicenter of Black culture, commerce, and it celebrates that through a program of art and landscape and storytelling that happens throughout this district, anchored on one end by famous Leimert Park, which is now going to be the site of a metro subway station that's really started to threaten the area with gentrification. And as a result, Black folks in that community have bound themselves together in land trusts and other forms of ownership to ensure that as the properties increase in value, that we are participating at the forefront of that.
And the relationship between that transit investment and what will become Destination Crenshaw is really important and we think relevant here. As LA Metro invested in extending light rail out to Crenshaw, they also helped to seed the partnership that would become the public-private partnership and the project that will become Destination Crenshaw. So setting precedent for, and this is a precedent that can be found in projects like this across the country, but one that we can also look to as we think about, matching public investment in transportation or transit infrastructure with investment in the community.
Great, thanks. Next. Right. So, shining a light on the history of the historic Albina community is maybe one way of healing and of generating pride about the resilience of the people who still, are in the general area, and some still in the specific neighborhood. On the left, we see a really elegant signage program that's deployed throughout the downtown of Birmingham, Alabama, and it's telling the story of the civil rights movement as it relates to that location in Birmingham. And this incredibly talented sister, Renee Kemp-Rotan, is the designer and author of this work. And it is really amazing at how even people who've lived in Birmingham, can stop and read about it and enhance their knowledge and understanding of the significance of that city's role in the civil rights movement. And on the right, we see this Africa Center kind of museum in New York City, which through its clever kind of aesthetic treatment to the facade, creates some, you may not recognize it and think of it in terms of Afrocentric design, but it's a little different, there's a little something. So you go in and you see how the histories are displayed for the public to understand the rich legacy of Black folks in New York. So we'll go to the next slide, please. And finally here, a couple of things are happening. We need places in which to lift up and celebrate our culture. So you see in the upper right, Columbia Heights in DC, a space that's very marked culturally and is the site of festivals and other things that bring the public out to understand and participate in celebration of Black culture. On the left, a poster from the Central Avenue Jazz Festival here in Los Angeles, where I am, that brings thousands of people out every year to really celebrate and experience Black culture through music, food, entertainment, etc. And then what is it about the Portland Black community and specifically the Lower Albina community that you would want to highlight and hold up and leverage for economic development purposes? What are festivals and other things that might happen in some of these spaces that might be created through this project that can satisfy that need? Olivia, you want to comment?
I would just call out here sort of the third prong of the Black CDC's programming in the 1619 Flex event space, which is both a space for community gathering and community events, as well as a space for entrepreneurs and others to hold events as they sort of grow and promote their businesses, and then as they grow awareness about the kinds of events that are held in West Louisville around that community as well. So it's a safe, welcoming space for community gathering, as well as having a function to serve their community wealth building programs.
Okay, and Nolan, I don't know whether you wanted to make any sort of final weigh in on urban design and its role in bringing these kinds of ideas to life.
Just briefly, community gathering can be supported in buildings and public open spaces. What's really critical is that they be safe spaces for the Black community, and that requires a combination of thoughtful design as well as ongoing management and curation of activation and programming. Design alone isn't enough. The governance alone isn't enough. It really is all those things, and it evolves over time. And so these are the result of long-term community investment and generating the culture around them.
Great, thanks. I think that's all we have to share with you image-wise tonight. I hope it's cultivated some thought and reaction and a way to translate these kinds of ideas into your vision for this particular community in Lower Albina. I didn't introduce myself properly. I'm an architect and an urban design principal with ZGF and Nolan's colleague.
So what we'd like to do at this point in time is we want to take about 25 minutes to allow you to tell us what are the kinds of things that you would like to see. What kind of spaces and places would you like to see created in Lower Albina Rose Quarter area? We're hoping that we can harvest your ideas about what you think is extremely important at this point to put back and to restore, to essentially serve the Black community and to provide restorative justice. So what kind of places and spaces need to be restored to the area that have been removed or have been eliminated through the course of displacement and gentrification of the last 70 years. So Charles is going to, we have a mural board, and we want to ask you a specific question and have you comment on it in relationship to community wealth, community health, and community cohesion. And that question is, what do you think are the most important types of programming and spaces to create in the revitalized Lower Albina Rose Quarter neighborhood to provide restorative justice to the Black historic community? And if you want to talk to any of those categories of wealth, health, or cohesion, feel free to do so. What we're really interested in tonight is hearing your ideas about what you think is important. So with that, I will open it up to.
And thank you for that, team. And I see that we have James Posey, and then we have Joe McFerrin.
Yeah, first of all, let me just say, and looking at all the presentations from around the country, I just want you all to know there are similar sort of parallels to stuff that's happening here important that we could probably have put.
James, we can barely hear you. Can you get closer to your mic, please?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can you hear me now?
Yep. I want to hear you.
Yeah, I was eating some nuts. You know, this Zoom stuff, they won't allow you to do all your stuff you do.
Yep.
But I was just saying that many of the things that were displayed in terms of the examples around the country also happened in Portland. Many of those ideas and concepts are already occurring in Portland. You could have put in parallel situations in Portland that relates to those same sort of things that other parts of the country have done. So you might want to just take a look at what's happened in Portland over the same sort of context. But I want to take a minute to say, you know, it takes a legacy to build businesses. There are people who have been uprooted in this community for generations. There are 3 or 4 generations that it takes to build a business, and the DNA that's in building businesses and having the entrepreneurial concept is embedded in that's uprooted and destroyed. Those things ought to be looked at. We do ancestry, you know, those ancestry things that look at people's ancestry wherever they're going. We have the same sort of legacy important that were destroyed based upon what the systems have done in this community, and we ought to put some energy in trying to determine those families that would have been long-term entrepreneurs in this community that were destroyed, and we ought to provide legacy slots for those individuals in whatever future that we have. Legacy slots that would allow those families to use those slots to build upon the legacy of those families that have built barbershops, beautician shops, everything in this community that are destroyed. And we just want to dismiss that. There's been generations of people who have tried to build businesses in this community that are gone now. We ought not just throw that away. Those families need to be restored. They need to be compensated for what they've been through and what they've struggled through. And we need to put them on the list, just like we do the virus. We ought to put them people as a preference to be able to restore what they lost over the last 100 years.
So you're saying that there should be preference in whatever kinds of governance and structure and policies get applied to any land that's available to families that have been impacted in the past out of the community?
Not for the simple sense of giving preference, but because those people have already demonstrated the capacity to have an entrepreneurial spirit and are willing to make the sacrifices to build businesses in our community. We ought to acknowledge that. We ought to favor that. We ought to sort of emphasize of those folk who have sacrifices to be independent spirits, independent people in this community to build businesses and build wealth. That's in their DNA.
So restoration of legacy businesses.
Absolutely. They need it because, you know, these businesses don't just happen. Right. They are formulated by virtue of the culture, the history, the family dynamics that make those things happen, that sustain them. There is some DNA, there is some genetic understanding of where a business is trying to go and what they're trying to do. We ought to try to support that and re-energize those families who have made those kind of sacrifices and have been who have been pioneers in the area of building businesses in Portland.
James,
all right. Well,
I like that phrase.
Appreciate that. We've got 4 hands up. So
I want to capture that phrase he said though of legacy slots. That's an interesting way to phrase it.
Legacy, yeah, why not? Why not? Why not do it that way? Because it only makes sense for people who have already made the sacrifices to be rewarded for the historical commitment to making our businesses what we know they should be today.
Great. We're going to hear from one facilitator at a time, folks. We're going to hear from Joe, and then we'll hear from Stephen.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll try to be real brief, but I had a clarifying question, Gina.
Yeah.
And that is, I'm inspired by what has been shared. As it relates to this project, I'm trying to wrap my head around how much square footage we're talking about with the overhang or with the work that's coming directly. Yeah, with the highway covers. Thank you. Mm-hmm. And are we talking about, so how much square footage are we talking there? And are the examples that you're showing here and citing, do they go beyond those coverings? And I was just trying to make the connection to why we're going so far beyond if we are. So if you just help me out, get me up to speed. Sorry.
So just a quick response, Joe. Essentially, what we're looking at is there going to be parcels available that that are going to essentially become available at the end of this project. There's going to be land that gets taken that ODOT will use during the project, but when the project's over, they will not have a need for that land. And so the issue is to really think more holistically, not just about the covers. All of these things can't happen on the covers, and I think Nolan was very clear about that in the front end. But how do we really use the covers to seed the things that might happen on either side of the freeway that would begin to recreate neighborhood and community? So we are looking at what people's ideas are. It's going to be the team's job to then look at what is going to be in play, and then to really think about providing some recommendations and some scenarios that will address this more holistically. So it will include the covers, but it'll also likely include the kind of the other parcels, the surplus parcels that could be in play at some point in the future.
Dana,
And,
can I also just chime in? Sorry, Nolan, go ahead.
Well, I probably could have been more clear that what we're really looking for at the end of the day is priorities, a sense of priorities. And we totally recognize not all of the priorities can be accommodated within the lids or the adjacent parcels, but to the extent that we hear from you and the community members in the workshops and others, we'll sort of understand what are those top 5 to 10 things, and then the different scenarios will show different approaches to accommodating them, and then you'll give us feedback on that too about where it's successful and where it might be more successful.
Good clarification, Nolan.
I was just going to add that may also be guided by where it is most efficient and effective to deliver some of these programs, right? Like, does a a small business node best serve the community if it's on the covers, or is it somewhere that is on a sort of historic main street or community corridor where people want to be and gather and walk and move? And is it most economically efficient and effective to deliver it on solid ground rather than on the cover structure? And is there a way to fund and finance that most efficiently?
We might also just move the screen up a little bit, Charles, so people can see some of the ideas that have already come out. So under community wealth, you can see these ideas of the different types of things that could be created or could be priorities. And I think what we're trying to do is get a sense from this group of what are your priorities in each of these in each of these categories of restorative justice, community wealth, health, and cohesion. So, and there may be something else that needs to go, that you want to add to the list. These are not exhaustive. They are things that have come up thus far. So it's important to, these are the kinds of ideas about places and spaces we're really trying to harvest from you tonight. These are some of the ideas around community health, types of spaces, and that could be programmed, in the neighborhood.
So Gina.
Yes.
One second.
I want to say real quick.
Hey, Mr. Posey, we have an order here. Why don't we put you after we've had our patient COAC members?
Okay.
Reading.
Yeah,
we have Stephen, then we have
take a note.
We have Stephen, Reverend Hennessy, and I'm going to ask our distinguished guests if they can be brief in their answers so we can get through as many COAC folks as we can.
Yeah,
so
it would be nice if we could hear from everybody.
Stephen, and then Reverend Matt Hennessy, and then Mr. Posey will go to you.
Thank you. I think one of the things that comes to mind for me, I love these conversations, but there needs to be some sort of connection as you go broader to the community and connecting it to ODOT being able to deliver on these things in the past, right? So, what's the role for ODOT in these great ideas actually happening, and what does accountability look like if they don't happen? Also, as you're continuing to talk to the community, make sure you add in the work that's already been done. So, all of the ideas that have been brought up, they're part of the Williams-Russell project, they're part of the State of Black Oregon project from the Urban League. They're part of Palf's People's Plan. People have been putting in ideas for decades. The Albina Community Plan, if you want to go back, 20 plus years. What hasn't happened yet is someone going and connecting the tactics to accountability and analysis, and putting in the action for those things to actually happen. All these are great ideas. None of them move us backwards. I don't think. I think there could be some more context for how these things are different and how they play out here and now versus in these other cities in different times. But I think you definitely have to connect the dots for why is ODOT a legitimate player in being able to pull these things off, so that you can connect those dots for people in the community so that they can really see these come to fruition versus old folks like me being like, we've given these ideas. Maybe it's you, maybe it's a city, maybe it's a county, but we've all given these ideas and then they never happen. So just build it out a little bit more so you can be able to do that.
I think that's a great comment. And the only retort, the only response I have, Stephen, is that, you've got an ESC, an executive steering committee that has all of those public partners or most of them on the. So this is not something that ODOT's going to do alone. This will require public partnerships of some of the other public entities. And I think what you said that's important is that we've got to create the how to go from the good idea to the implementation of the good idea as part of our development scenarios. And we hope to do that. Yeah.
I understand that there's a distinction between accountability and responsibility, but once people start bringing up these ideas, it's important that we start putting people to task on who's responsible and who's accountable for different things. so that
Absolutely.
we're not 5 years from now and these same conversations are happening.
Great comment. Thank you so much. You're absolutely right.
Good, Reverend Hennessy.
Yes, thank you again, Janelle. And to Gina, Nolan, Stephen, and Olivia, very good presentation tonight. I really appreciate it. And for Stephen, I'm a former city manager and police commissioner from Michigan. So I appreciate from where you're coming from, and good to see the Detroit stuff. I'll try to do this as quickly as I can. Number one, because there were a lot of things that I wrote down, but I loved the affordable housing renderings tonight, especially looking at it from a standpoint of design. I really liked the West Hollywood and the Houston examples. I thought they were very good. I also, to expand that conversation about affordable housing, within that structure could be such things as a youth innovation center. So how young people can have like a technology or OMSI kind of experience inside that place, or again, somewhere involved there. I really believe in the intergenerational type of center where you have daycare for young people as well as daycare for elderly, which I think we need to think about. We must think about senior housing, because the baby boom group, which many are here in this room tonight, you're going to need some place to stay at some point. Things are, that's just it's a fact. Green space, I think, is great. That could be used in so many different ways. And so the other thing that I want to add tonight that I did not see was green space for concerts as well. Think of that as an opportunity, or for arts exhibits and things of that nature. A training center for that's integrated with affordable housing. I mentioned as I was writing the idea of the history, the mini museum. I like what was done. I believe we had an example of the Detroit where you've got the placards that tell you the story of the history, which I think is really, really relevant. And Farmers Market, I think, is a great idea. And the last one I put down was live and work. Sort of, again, think about this from a standpoint, because this is such an unaffordable city to live in, how we take the concept of live work, and then finally how we develop the opportunities for Black business. So I don't see myself as contradicting anything else that's said. I give thumbs up to much of what's been said already, and tried to highlight some things that may not have been said. Thank you for the time tonight. I think it was a very, very inspiring presentation.
Pastor Hennessy, when you say training center, what kind of training center are you talking about?
Yeah, I'm thinking of the expansion of things like what's going on with Constructing Hope, or what's happening with iUrban Teen with Dina, things like that. And quite frankly, my thought is, let's think about this broadly for, could be healthcare workers, a number of different things, I believe.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments.
You bet, thank you.
Real quick, that historic signage, the civil rights signage, was in Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, in Birmingham, yeah. I'm sorry. I thought I saw something in Detroit too, but I think the Birmingham stuff is great.
Great. We have Mr. Posey, and then we'll go to Joel.
Yeah, I just want to let you all know, I'm from Indianapolis, and I see these signs up all over where I used to live at. This is where Black people used to live. Or archaeological people will look back and see where Black people used to live. I'm not trying to be that. I want us as Black people to be now. We need to prioritize how we can exist and sustain ourselves. So I'm very, very much interested in making sure that we don't spend a lot of time trying to do things that will not relate directly to our survival as a race of people in America. And so we need to sustain ourselves, and we need to prioritize how we spend our resources and our avenues in terms of how we can put resources that will generate resources to make us self-sustaining. And when I see us talk about all these cultural things, these are all nice, neat, and cute and everything, But at the end of the day, Black people got to eat, they got to have a roof over their head, and they got to have a way to sustain themselves. And so when we start talking about these things, and we start talking about having businesses and the capacity to be in the marketplace, this is not what white people do. They look at the market, they know what's going to sell and what's not going to sell. And so we need to prioritize where we spend our resources, where we spend our time, so that we can have a sustainability into the future. That's what I like. That's what I like. That's what I liked about what Stephen Green says. There is no plan. There is no one's putting a dollar sign on what these things will look like and how we will be sustainable over the next 25, 30 years. When I see that, then I know we really are talking seriously about us making this project the way it ought to be.
All right, thank you. Did we
Joe?
have somebody else, Janelle, that was?
Yeah.
All right.
Joe.
Yeah, I would just like to underscore the value of a gym, somewhere that we can work on health and fitness. As I think about and dream about this particular project, I think a place where that's all inclusive, a place where we can exercise, a place where we can watch our kids compete, and not necessarily thinking about turning kids into professional athletes or anything like that. I'm not thinking along those lines. I'm just talking about a place where families can gather and fellowship around athletics and health and wellness. So I would really, really like to see a space that you can have exercise for seniors and just the full gamut. I think that makes for a healthy community. And it's just so sad what we've lost. One of the places used to be the Salvation Army. Years ago, on Saturday, I saw during Biddy Ball, I had an opportunity as a volunteer to just touch and rub shoulders with so many Black folks, young and old. There's opportunity to share information and just look folks in the eye. And it really built a sense of community, and we've lost that. And so I'd like to see that here. Thank you.
Joe, if I could just say one thing real quick. We're working on a project with property owners across the street from one of the professional football stadiums. And part of what they want to do, because they have just parking there, is they want to replace that with a parking structure, but they want to build a field house and a couple of athletic fields and use I've created a signage program like the one we just saw for Birmingham about the athletes from that team, use that to get that team involved and creating, neighborhood health, just like what you're talking about, but leverage. Could you imagine leveraging Dame Lillard and those, folks to come in and be part of catalyzing that kind of activity? So I think that those are the kind of finance and financial structures that we need to look at.
And partnerships.
To
Do we have any other comments?
We do not. And if you want to go ahead and wrap up, because we have public comment in just about 1 minute.
All right. So a couple of things that I want to say. Our next step is to actually take the ideas we've heard in workshop 1 and to begin to craft scenarios of, that will show how the design on the covers and around the covers might roll out based on the options that we are contracted for, that Nolan shared with you in the front end of our presentation. I would also encourage you, we do have our online open house that is up. It's on our website, which is www.albinahighwaycovers.com. We would encourage you to go to the open house and take the survey. So if there's any other thoughts that come to mind that you didn't share with us tonight, that you could provide them in that format. And we want to thank you for staying late tonight so that we could come share our presentation with you.
Great. Thank you so much, team. And with that, we'll go ahead and go over to public comment. Amber, I'm looking to you if you can maybe populate the public comment slides, and we'll determine whether or not we have members from the public who would like to address the committee.
At this time, Aaron or Grace, can you determine whether there is anyone that needs to make public comment? Make public comment. So if there is, please call for the live call-in number 971-247-1195. The meeting ID that you need to enter is 838-2563-9732, and your passcode is 218776. Or you can leave a voicemail for us at 503-470-3127. If you wish to make public comment, you have 1 minute. Please state your name. You may also send us an email at info@i5rosequarter.org. And if you plan to do so, please identify that in the subject line by indicating COAC public comments. Do we have any public comments at this time?
No, we do not.
Maybe we'll just wait a few moments in case folks are dialing in here. Still no public comment?
No.
Okay. Well, with that, I'm going to close out our discussion. Megan, I'm wondering if you would like to give final remarks on behalf of ODOT, and then we'll let our committee go. Go ahead.
I'd be happy to, Janelle. Just want to say thank you to both of our teams tonight, joint venture, Hamilton Sunt joint venture with Raymore Construction for the diversity plan conversation, and to the COAC for your robust conversations there. I'll just emphasize, like, this is exactly the type of input that we want. I know in the breakout group that I was in, your comments that you shared, particularly sort of as it relates to how we've done business in the past, how we're going to do business moving forward, where our sideboards land in that, having your input to be able to share directly back within the agency from the community is incredibly important and powerful to help us push that envelope. So thank you for your feedback there, and looking forward to gathering the notes from this meeting and making sure that we're addressing those. And then secondly, thank you very much to the Independent Highway Cover team. As always, I know you guys have done a number of presentations over the past week, but wonderful job this evening as well. And again, to the COAC, thank you for your great feedback on that process. You know, this is a legacy opportunity, and we can't do it without the feedback with your expertise of both lived and professional experience. So thank you for that. Looking forward to ongoing conversations with you. And with that, Janelle, I'll turn it back to you.
Great. Well, thank you, COAC, for another wonderful meeting. I continue to be impressed with both your depth and breadth of not only knowledge, but passion for our collective community. So you'll be hearing from us soon, and everyone have a great evening. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.